Ellie stood frozen in the middle of the living room, her hands shaking as she stared at the man her father had just called her husband. The wedding hall was still decorated with white flowers from the ceremony that had ended only an hour ago, yet nothing about this moment felt like a celebration. It felt like a sentence. "You cannot be serious," Ellie said, turning to her father, her voice cracking with disbelief. "A mechanic. You are marrying me off to a mechanic with a child?" Gerald Whitmore did not meet his daughter's eyes. He rubbed his palms together the way he always did when he was avoiding the truth. "Ellie, this is not the time. Please, just go along with it. For me." "For you?" Ellie's voice rose. "You ruined our family with your bad decisions, and now I have to pay for them by marrying a stranger?" Nathan stood quietly by the door, holding his 6-year-old daughter Lily's small hand. He had not said a single word since the wedding ended, but his eyes carried something Ellie could not quite understand. It was not anger. It was not embarrassment. It was calm, steady patience, the kind that unsettled her more than shouting ever could. "I did not ask for this either," Nathan finally said, his voice low but firm. "But I gave my word to your father, and I intend to keep it. If you want to be angry at him, not at my daughter." Ellie looked down at Lily, who was clutching a small stuffed rabbit and staring up at her with wide, curious eyes. For a moment, Ellie's anger faltered, but it returned just as quickly when she remembered why she was standing in this house at all. 3 days earlier, Gerald Whitmore had sat Ellie down at their dining table, his face pale, and his hands trembling around a cup of coffee he never drank. "I owe a man a great deal of money," he had said. "Money I do not have. He has agreed to forgive part of the debt if you marry his cousin." "His cousin?" Ellie had repeated, stunned. "You are selling me to pay off your gambling debts?" "It is not gambling," Gerald had snapped, though the guilt on his face said otherwise. "It was a bad investment. I trusted the wrong people. This marriage will save us, Ellie. It will save our home, our name, everything." Ellie had refused at first. She had screamed, cried, threatened to leave and never return. But when the men her father owed money to began showing up at their door, their voices sharp and threatening, she understood there was no way out. Her father was drowning, and somehow, impossibly, she was the only rope he had left to throw. So she had agreed. She had worn the white dress, walked down the aisle, and said the words the officiant told her to say, all while feeling like she was watching herself from far away, like this was happening to someone else. Now, standing in Nathan's small house with its cracked walls and mismatched furniture, reality hit her harder than she expected. This was not a temporary inconvenience. This was her life now. "The guest room is upstairs," Nathan said quietly, breaking the silence. "It is small, but it is clean. Lily and I sleep in the other rooms. You will have your privacy." Ellie said nothing. She simply walked past him, dragging her suitcase up the narrow staircase, refusing to let him see the tears building in her eyes. That night, Ellie lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to unfamiliar sounds. A creaking pipe, the soft hum of a fan, the occasional whisper of Nathan reading a bedtime story to Lily through the thin walls. She had grown up in a house with marble floors and a view of the city skyline. Now she was surrounded by peeling paint and second-hand furniture, married to a man she barely knew. She thought about her old friends, the ones who used to admire her designer handbags and envy her father's business connections. She wondered what they would say if they could see her now. Probably laugh. Probably whisper behind her back about how the wealthy Whitmore girl had fallen so far. The next morning, Ellie woke to the smell of eggs and toast. She walked downstairs cautiously, expecting an awkward silence, but instead found Nathan at the stove, Lily sitting at the table swinging her legs happily. "Good morning," Nathan said simply, sliding a plate toward the empty seat at the table. "I made breakfast. I was not sure what you like, so I made a little of everything." Ellie stared at the plate, unsure how to respond. In her old house, breakfast had always been prepared by hired staff, eaten in silence while she scrolled through her phone. This felt strangely intimate, and it made her uncomfortable. "I am not hungry," she said stiffly, though her stomach betrayed her with a quiet growl. Nathan did not push her. He simply nodded and continued eating with his daughter, occasionally wiping a bit of jam from her cheek with a gentle laugh. Ellie watched from the doorway, feeling like an outsider in a home that was somehow already full of warmth she had not expected to find. Later that day, Ellie wandered into the small garage attached to the house, curious despite herself. Tools were neatly organized along the walls, and an old motorcycle sat half-assembled in the corner. She ran her fingers along the workbench, surprised by how clean and orderly everything was for someone she had assumed would live in chaos. "Careful," Nathan said from behind her, making her jump. "Some of these tools are sharp." "I was just looking," Ellie said quickly, stepping back. Nathan walked over, picking up a wrench and setting it back in its proper place. "You can look anytime you want. I do not mind." Ellie studied him for a moment, trying to read something beneath his calm exterior. "Why are you being so nice to me? I did not want this marriage. I made that very clear." Nathan paused, considering his words carefully. "Being angry at each other will not change the situation we are both in. I have a daughter to raise, and I would rather she grow up in a peaceful home than one filled with resentment. If you want to hate me, that is your choice, but I will not hate you back." Ellie did not know how to respond to that. She turned and walked back into the house, her mind swirling with confusion. She had expected bitterness, maybe even cruelty, from a man she believed had been paid to take her off her father's hands. Instead, she found quiet dignity, something she had not encountered in a long time. Over the following days, small moments began to chip away at Ellie's hardened exterior, though she refused to admit it even to herself. She noticed how Nathan always let Lily choose the bedtime story, patiently reading the same book night after night without complaint. She noticed how he walked Lily to school every morning, holding an umbrella over her head during sudden rain showers, never once complaining about getting soaked himself. One evening, Ellie's necklace, a gift from her late mother, snapped while she was reaching for a book on a high shelf. The delicate chain fell to the floor, and Ellie knelt down, panic rising in her chest as she gathered the broken pieces. "Let me see it," Nathan said, appearing beside her without her noticing. "You cannot fix this," Ellie said sharply, clutching the necklace protectively. "It is delicate. It needs a professional." "I used to repair small machine parts before I became a mechanic," Nathan said calmly. "Jewelry clasps are not so different. Just trust me." Reluctantly, Ellie handed him the necklace. She watched, holding her breath, as his rough, calloused hands worked with surprising gentleness, carefully realigning the tiny clasp with a small tool from his kit. Within minutes, he handed it back to her, fully repaired. "Thank you," Ellie whispered, genuinely surprised. It was the first time she had thanked him for anything since the wedding. Nathan simply nodded and returned to his work, as if the gesture meant nothing to him, though Ellie noticed a small, quiet smile on his face as he walked away. That night, Ellie sat by her window, turning the repaired necklace over in her hands. She thought about her father, about the anger she still carried for the position he had put her in, but she also thought about Nathan, about the strange calmness he carried despite everything he must have gone through, as a widowed father raising a child alone. "Who are you really?" she wondered, staring out into the darkened street. The question lingered in her mind long after she closed her eyes, a small seed of curiosity planted where resentment had once grown so easily. The following weekend, Ellie found herself accompanying Lily to a small park down the road, while Nathan finished a late shift at the garage. She had not planned on going, but Lily had tugged at her sleeve so persistently, asking to be pushed on the swings, that Ellie had not found it in herself to refuse. "Higher!" Lily squealed with delight, as Ellie pushed the swing gently. "Daddy pushes higher than that." "I do not want you flying off into the trees," Ellie said, a small laugh escaping her before she could stop it. It was the first time she had laughed since arriving at this house, and it surprised her almost as much as it surprised Lily, who giggled in response. An older woman sitting on a nearby bench watched them with a warm smile. "You must be Nathan's new wife," she said. "Lily has been talking about you all week at the community center. She says you smell like flowers." Ellie smiled awkwardly, unsure how to respond to such an innocent observation. "I did not realize she noticed things like that." "Children notice everything," the woman said, chuckling. "That man is a good father, you know. Ever since his wife passed, he has done everything possible to give that little girl a stable, loving home. It could not have been easy, doing it alone all this time." Ellie nodded, watching Lily climb up the small slide with the same fearless energy she always seemed to carry. How long has it been since his wife passed? Nearly 3 years now, the woman said thoughtfully. He never remarried, never even seemed interested in trying, until this arrangement with your family came along. I was surprised, honestly, but Lily seems happy, and that matters more than anything else. Walking home later that evening, with Lily skipping ahead and humming a tune from a cartoon she loved, Ellie found herself thinking about the quiet sacrifices Nathan must have made over the past 3 years, raising a young daughter entirely on his own, while working long hours at the garage. It was a kind of strength she had never had to consider before, having grown up surrounded by hired help and endless resources. That night, as she helped Lily into her pajamas, the little girl looked up at her with wide, curious eyes. "Are you going to stay with us forever?" The question caught Ellie off guard, and for a moment, she did not know how to answer. "I am not sure, sweetheart, but I am here now, and I will take good care of you while I am." Lily seemed satisfied with that answer, snuggling into her blanket with her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. Ellie sat by her bedside a moment longer than necessary, watching the child drift off to sleep, feeling something unfamiliar stir quietly in her chest, something that felt dangerously close to affection. Little did Ellie know, the man she had dismissed as nothing more than a poor mechanic was carrying secrets far bigger than she could imagine, secrets that would soon change everything she believed about her forced marriage, and about the quiet, patient man now sharing her home. A loud knock rattled the front door before the sun had even fully risen, sharp and urgent, the kind of knock that made Ellie's heart jump before she even understood why. She rushed down the stairs in her robe, finding Nathan already standing at the door, his shoulders tense in a way she had never seen before. A tall man in a gray coat stood on the porch, his expression unreadable. "Nathan," the man said simply, "it has been a long time." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Gregory, what are you doing here?" "I think you know why I am here," Gregory said, glancing past Nathan toward Ellie, who stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs. "Is this her, the new wife?" "This does not concern you," Nathan said firmly, stepping slightly to block the man's view. "Whatever business we have, it stays between us. Not here, not in front of my family." Gregory's eyes lingered on Ellie for a moment longer before he nodded slowly. "Fine, but this will not wait forever, Nathan. You know that." The man turned and walked back to a black car parked at the curb, driving away without another word. Nathan closed the door and stood there for a long moment, his hand still resting on the handle, his breathing slightly uneven. "Who was that?" Ellie asked, unable to hide the curiosity in her voice. "No one important," Nathan said quickly, too quickly. "An old acquaintance. Nothing to worry about." Ellie did not believe him, but she did not push further. Something about the tension in his shoulders told her this was not a conversation he was willing to have. Not yet. Later that day, Ellie decided to walk to the small market a few streets away, partly to buy groceries, and partly to clear her head. The neighborhood was modest, filled with small shops and narrow streets, so different from the gated community she had grown up in. As she walked past the local repair shop where Nathan worked, she noticed an elderly woman standing near the entrance, speaking quietly with one of the mechanics. "Is Nathan in today?" the woman asked, her voice trembling slightly. "He stepped out for a delivery," the mechanic replied. "Can I help you with something, Mrs. Caldwell?" The old woman shook her head, her eyes glistening. No, I just wanted to thank him again. If it were not for him paying for my husband's surgery last year, I do not know what we would have done. He never lets me repay him, you know. Every time I try, he refuses." Ellie stood a few feet away, pretending to browse a nearby stall while secretly listening. Paying for someone's surgery? That did not sound like something a struggling mechanic could afford. She felt a strange twist in her stomach, confusion mixing with something she could not quite name. That evening, over a quiet dinner, Ellie found herself studying Nathan more closely than usual. He ate slowly, occasionally glancing at Lily to make sure she was eating her vegetables, completely unaware of the questions swirling in Ellie's mind. "I heard something interesting today," Ellie said carefully, testing the waters. "A woman named Mrs. Caldwell mentioned you helped pay for her husband's surgery." Nathan's hand paused briefly over his glass before he continued eating. She exaggerates. I helped a little. That is all. It was not much. A surgery is not exactly a small expense, Ellie pressed gently. People are generous with their words when they are grateful, Nathan replied, his tone calm but guarded. It was not as significant as she makes it sound. Ellie wanted to ask more, but the subtle shift in his posture told her this was a wall she would not be able to break through so easily, at least not yet. She decided to let it go for the night, though the questions continued to circle in her mind long after she went to bed. Over the following weeks, Ellie noticed more inconsistencies, small threads that did not quite match the image of a simple mechanic struggling to make ends meet. She noticed how Nathan always paid the neighborhood children's school fees quietly, without ever mentioning it to anyone. She noticed how the local shop owners greeted him with a strange mixture of respect and gratitude, far beyond what a regular customer would receive. One afternoon, while cleaning out a closet in the guest room, Ellie stumbled upon an old cardboard box tucked in the back corner, covered in a thin layer of dust. Curiosity got the better of her, and she carefully opened it, expecting old clothes or forgotten toys. Inside, she found a stack of photographs, faded slightly with age. In one photo, a much younger Nathan stood in front of a large office building, dressed in an expensive suit, shaking hands with a group of men in similarly formal attire. In another, he stood beside a sleek car, smiling confidently, nothing like the quiet, humble man she had come to know over the past few weeks. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the photographs. There were certificates too, folded carefully at the bottom of the box, bearing his name alongside titles she did not expect. Senior engineer, project director. The dates suggested these were not recent, but they painted a picture entirely different from the man currently working long hours at a small local garage. Before she could dig any further, she heard footsteps approaching, and quickly closed the box, sliding it back into its hiding place just as Nathan appeared in the doorway. "Looking for something?" he asked, his voice carrying a slight edge she had not heard before. "Just cleaning," Ellie said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "I did not mean to go through your things." Nathan's eyes flickered toward the closet for a brief moment before he nodded, his expression returning to its usual calm. "It is fine. Just old things I do not need anymore." He left the room without further explanation, but Ellie could not shake the image of those photographs from her mind. Who was this man, really? And why was someone with such an impressive past living such a modest, quiet life, hiding away in a small house on the edge of town? That night, unable to sleep, Ellie decided to do something she had never considered before. She quietly made her way downstairs, careful not to wake Lily, and slipped out the back door into the cool night air. She walked to the small garage a few streets over, the same one where Nathan worked during the day, hoping to find someone who might answer her growing list of questions. The garage was closed, but a dim light glowed from inside, and she could see an older man, likely the shop owner, still working late. She knocked gently on the glass door, and after a moment, he opened it, looking at her with mild surprise. "You are Nathan's wife," the man said, recognition dawning on his face. "Is everything all right?" "I was hoping to ask you a few questions about Nathan," Ellie said carefully, "about his past, before he started working here." The man's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "That is not really my place to discuss, miss. If you want to know about his past, you should ask him directly." "I have tried," Ellie admitted, her voice softening. "He does not want to talk about it. I just want to understand the man I am married to." The shop owner studied her for a long moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. Finally, he sighed, gesturing for her to step inside out of the cold night air. "I will tell you this much. Nathan was not always like this. He used to have a very different life, a very successful one. Something happened, something that changed everything for him. He does not like to talk about it, and honestly, it is not something I feel comfortable sharing without his permission." "What kind of something?" Ellie pressed gently. The man shook his head firmly. "That is all I am willing to say. If you truly want answers, you need to earn his trust enough for him to tell you himself. Trust me, whatever happened, it changed him deeply. Be patient with him." Before Ellie left, the shop owner added one more thing, his voice softer than before. "I will tell you this too. Whatever happened to him, it did not make him bitter. Most men who lose everything become hard, angry, difficult to work with. Nathan is none of those things. He shows up early, stays late, and never once complains about the work being beneath him. Whatever his past was, his character survived it intact. That says more about a person than any title ever could. Ellie thanked him quietly and stepped back out into the cool night, turning his words over in her mind. She thought about her own reaction when her comfortable life had been disrupted, how quickly anger and resentment had taken hold of her. Nathan had lost far more than she had, and yet somehow, he had chosen patience and quiet dignity instead. Ellie left the garage that night with more questions than answers, her mind spinning with possibilities. She walked home slowly, glancing up at the stars scattered across the dark sky, wondering what kind of tragedy could transform a successful engineer into a quiet mechanic hiding in a small, unremarkable house. The next morning brought a new complication. Ellie's father called, his voice tight with barely concealed panic. The men he owed money to were demanding payment sooner than expected, threatening to seize what remained of the family's assets if the debt was not settled within the month. "Ellie, I need your help," Gerald said, his voice trembling through the phone. "Perhaps your husband could speak to Gregory on my behalf. Ask for more time." "Gregory?" Ellie repeated, her stomach dropping. "The same Gregory who came to Nathan's door last week?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You know Gregory? He showed up here," Ellie said slowly, pieces beginning to click together in her mind. Nathan seemed to know him quite well. "What is going on, Dad? Is Gregory connected to the debt you owe?" Gerald hesitated before answering. "Gregory works for the man I owe money to. I did not realize he and Nathan had a history, but perhaps that could actually work in our favor. Please, Ellie, just ask Nathan if he can help." That evening, Ellie approached Nathan cautiously, unsure how to bring up such a sensitive topic. She found him in the garage, working on Lily's bicycle, carefully tightening a loose chain. "My father is in trouble again," Ellie began hesitantly. "The men he owes money to, they are demanding payment soon. I know Gregory visited you last week. Are you connected to this somehow?" Nathan's hands stilled on the bicycle chain, his expression darkening slightly. "Your father's debts are complicated, Ellie. More complicated than you realize. I cannot simply speak to Gregory and make this disappear." "But you know him," Ellie pressed. "You clearly have some kind of history with him. Please, if there is anything you can do to help my father, I am asking you." Nathan set down his tools and looked at her directly, his eyes carrying a weight she had not seen before. "There are things about my past that are connected to people like Gregory, things I have worked very hard to leave behind. Getting involved again, even to help your father, could bring consequences I am not sure either of us are ready to face." "What kind of consequences?" Ellie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, staring down at the half-repaired bicycle as if searching for the right words. "I will think about what I can do," he finally said. "But I need you to trust me on this, Ellie. There are things happening that are bigger than just your father's debt, and bigger than either of us realizes right now." Ellie nodded slowly, though her mind was racing with unanswered questions. The quiet, humble mechanic she had reluctantly married was clearly hiding a past far more complicated than she had ever imagined. A past that seemed to be catching up with both of them faster than either was prepared for. As she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling once again, Ellie could not help but feel that everything she thought she understood about her situation was about to change dramatically. The photographs, the mysterious visitor, the gratitude of strangers, all of it pointed toward a truth that Nathan had been carefully hiding, a truth that was now beginning to unravel thread by thread, whether he was ready for it or not. The phone rang again the very next morning, this time much earlier than expected, and the number on the screen made Ellie's stomach twist into a knot. It was Gregory. She stared at the buzzing phone on the kitchen counter, unsure whether to answer, until Nathan walked in and saw the screen himself. "Give it to me," he said quietly, his voice tighter than she had ever heard it. Ellie handed him the phone without a word. Nathan stepped outside onto the small porch, closing the door behind him, but Ellie could still hear fragments of his voice through the thin glass window, sharp and controlled in a way that felt entirely different from the calm man she had grown used to. "I told you I am not involved in that world anymore," Nathan said firmly. "Whatever arrangement Gerald made, it has nothing to do with me." There was a pause, presumably while Gregory spoke on the other end. And then Nathan's voice dropped even lower, almost a whisper Ellie had to strain to hear. "If you touch her family, you will regret involving me at all. I know exactly what you and your associates are capable of, and I am telling you now, leave them alone." When Nathan walked back inside, his face had returned to its usual calm mask, but Ellie noticed the slight tremor in his hands as he set the phone down on the counter. "What did he say?" Ellie asked carefully. "Nothing you need to worry about," Nathan replied, though his tone lacked its usual conviction. "I am handling it." "Handling what, exactly?" Ellie pressed, frustration bubbling up after weeks of vague answers. "Nathan, my father is terrified. These men are threatening our home, our family's safety. If you know something that could help, I deserve to know what is happening." Nathan sat down heavily at the kitchen table, running a hand through his hair, looking older and more tired than Ellie had ever seen him. "There are things about my past I have kept hidden, not because I am ashamed, but because revealing them puts people I care about at risk. The moment certain people know who I really am, everything changes. My peace, Lily's safety, all of it becomes complicated again." "Who are you, Nathan?" Ellie asked softly, sitting across from him. "Please, just tell me the truth." Nathan was quiet for a long moment, staring down at his rough, calloused hands that Ellie now understood had once signed important business contracts instead of fixing broken engines. "Before Lily was born, before my wife passed away, I ran a successful engineering firm. We built infrastructure projects, bridges, water systems, things that mattered to entire communities. I was wealthy, respected, and foolishly trusting of the wrong people." Ellie leaned forward, hanging on every word, finally getting the answers she had been searching for. "My business partner, a man named Victor, convinced me to take on an investor for a major project," Nathan continued, his voice growing distant as he recalled the memories. "That investor turned out to be connected to serious criminal activity, using our legitimate company to hide illegal money. When authorities began investigating, Victor disappeared, leaving me to answer for crimes I never knowingly committed." "What happened?" Ellie whispered. "I spent months proving my innocence, spending nearly everything I owned on lawyers just to clear my name," Nathan said. "By the time the truth came out and I was cleared of any wrongdoing, my reputation in that industry was already ruined. No one wanted to work with the man who had been publicly accused, even after being proven innocent. Then my wife became sick, and not long after, she passed away, leaving me alone with Lily." Ellie felt a lump forming in her throat, understanding for the first time the depth of pain hidden beneath Nathan's calm exterior. "Why did you not try to rebuild your business, start over somewhere else?" "I did try, for a while," Nathan admitted. "But Gregory and the people connected to that original investor kept finding me, trying to pull me back into dealings I wanted nothing to do with. I decided the only way to truly protect Lily was to disappear completely, live a quiet, simple life where no one would come looking for the successful engineer I used to be." "And Mrs. Caldwell's surgery, the school fees for the neighborhood children?" Ellie asked. A small, sad smile crossed Nathan's face. "I still have some savings left from before everything fell apart. I choose to use it quietly, helping people who genuinely need it, without drawing attention to myself. It brings me peace, knowing I can still do some good, even in this small, quiet life." Ellie sat back in her chair, processing everything she had just learned. The poor mechanic she had been forced to marry, the man she had judged so harshly, was actually someone who had lost everything, through no fault of his own, yet still found ways to quietly help others while asking for nothing in return. "Why did you agree to marry me?" Ellie asked. "You could have said no to my father's arrangement." Nathan looked at her seriously. "Your father helped me once, years ago, before everything fell apart, when Victor first tried to frame me. He testified on my behalf, told the truth about conversations he witnessed, even though it could have damaged his own business relationships at the time. I owed him a debt of gratitude I could never fully repay. When he came to me asking for this favor, desperate and out of options, I felt it was my chance to finally settle that debt." Ellie stared at Nathan, stunned by yet another layer of truth she had not expected. Her father, a man she had blamed entirely for ruining her life, had actually done something honorable years ago, something that had quietly connected their families, long before this arranged marriage was ever proposed. Gregory works for the same people connected to Victor, Nathan continued. When he showed up here, he was testing whether I still had any connections or resources left that could be useful to them. Now that your father owes them money, they see an opportunity to pull me back into their world, using your family's debt as leverage. What are you going to do? Ellie asked, fear creeping into her voice. I need to be very careful, Nathan said. If I show them I still have resources or connections, they will not stop pressuring us. But if I appear completely powerless, they may increase pressure on your father instead, assuming there is nothing standing in their way. Over the following days, Ellie found herself looking at Nathan through an entirely different lens. The quiet patience she had once mistaken for simplicity now revealed itself as remarkable strength, the strength of a man who had lost everything, yet still chose kindness over bitterness. She began helping him more actively around the house, no longer treating her new life as a punishment, but as a situation she needed to navigate wisely, alongside a man she was slowly beginning to respect. One afternoon, while Nathan was at work, Ellie decided to visit her father, hoping to gather more information about his history with Nathan. She found Gerald pacing nervously in his study, surrounded by stacks of financial documents. Dad, I need you to tell me everything, Ellie said firmly, closing the door behind her. About your connection to Nathan, about what really happened years ago with his old business. Gerald sighed heavily, sitting down at his desk. Years ago, I was a witness to a business meeting where Nathan's partner, Victor, tried to convince investors to overlook certain irregularities in their financial records. I did not fully understand the implications at the time, but when Nathan was later accused of wrongdoing, I came forward and testified about what I had witnessed. It helped clear his name, though by then, the damage to his reputation was already done. Why did you never tell me this before? Ellie asked. It was a long time ago, Ellie. I did not think it was relevant to your life, Gerald admitted. When my current troubles began and I needed help, I remembered Nathan and the debt of gratitude he still felt toward me. I am not proud of using that connection to arrange your marriage, but I saw no other way to protect our family. Ellie studied her father carefully, seeing him now not just as the man who had ruined her old life, but as someone who had, in his own flawed way, tried to protect his family using whatever resources remained available to him. These men, the ones connected to Gregory, Ellie said slowly. How dangerous are they really? Gerald's face paled slightly. Dangerous enough that I fear for our safety if this debt is not settled soon. They have connections throughout the city, business and otherwise. I made a terrible mistake trusting them for a loan when my usual sources fell through. That evening, Ellie returned home more determined than ever to help Nathan navigate whatever storm was brewing around their small, quiet household. She found him sitting on the porch steps, staring out at the darkening sky, Lily already asleep inside. I spoke with my father, Ellie said, sitting down beside him. I understand now why you agreed to this marriage. I understand what you gave up, and what you continue to sacrifice quietly, every single day. Nathan looked at her, surprise evident in his expression. I did not expect you to see any of this so clearly, especially not so soon. I judged you unfairly, Ellie admitted. I saw a poor mechanic and assumed the worst, when really, you are one of the strongest, most honorable people I have ever met. Nathan turned to look at her, studying her face carefully in the fading evening light. Do you remember when you first arrived here, how you refused to even eat breakfast at the same table as me? Ellie felt a flush of embarrassment. I was angry at the whole world back then. I am sorry for how cold I was. You do not need to apologize, Nathan said gently. I understood why. You lost everything familiar to you in a single day, forced into a life you never chose. I never held it against you, even when it was difficult to watch. I judged you before I even knew you, Ellie admitted. I assumed poverty meant something about your character, when really it meant nothing at all. You gave up wealth to protect your daughter, and you never once complained about the cost. Nathan reached over and gently took her hand, an act that surprised them both. Perhaps we were both given exactly the lesson we needed, in exactly the strange way we needed to learn it. A comfortable silence settled between them, different from the tense, awkward silences of their first days together. For the first time since their forced marriage began, Ellie felt something other than resentment toward the man sitting beside her, something that felt dangerously close to genuine respect, and perhaps the very beginning of something more. But even as this new understanding began to bloom between them, Ellie knew the danger surrounding their small family was far from over. Gregory and the people he represented were not going to simply disappear, and soon, both Ellie and Nathan would need to decide exactly how far they were willing to go to protect the fragile peace they had only just begun to build together. The phone call came at midnight, jolting Ellie awake with a start. She heard Nathan's voice from downstairs, tense and urgent, and she rushed down to find him already dressed, grabbing his jacket from the hook by the door. "What is happening?" Ellie asked, fear creeping into her voice. "Your father's shop, the small furniture store he still owns. It caught fire an hour ago," Nathan said grimly. "The fire department believes it was deliberate. I need to go check on him." Ellie's heart dropped. "I am coming with you." They arrived to find Gerald standing outside the smoldering remains of his last remaining business, his face ash-gray, staring blankly at the destruction. Firefighters were still working to fully extinguish the flames, and neighbors had gathered along the street, whispering among themselves. "Dad," Ellie called out, rushing to his side. "Are you all right?" Gerald did not respond immediately, his eyes still fixed on the burning building. "They warned me," he finally whispered. "Gregory called yesterday, said if I did not find a way to pay soon, there would be consequences. I did not think they would actually do something like this." Nathan's jaw tightened as he surveyed the scene, his mind clearly working through the situation. "This is exactly what I feared. They are done waiting patiently. We need to act quickly, before this escalates even further." Later that night, back at the house, Nathan sat at the kitchen table, staring at an old phone he had retrieved from a locked drawer, one Ellie had never seen him use before. His fingers hovered over the screen for a long moment, before he finally dialed a number. "Victor," Nathan said when the call connected, his voice steady despite the tension evident in his shoulders. "I need to speak with you. It has been a long time, but we have a mutual problem that needs solving." Ellie listened from the doorway, stunned that Nathan was reaching out to the very man who had once destroyed his reputation and his life. The conversation continued for several minutes, Nathan's voice alternating between controlled calm and quiet firmness, though Ellie could only hear fragments of what was being discussed. When he finally ended the call, Nathan looked exhausted, rubbing his eyes with the palm of his hand. "Victor still has connections to the people threatening your father. He owes me a debt he has never repaid, not in money, but in truth. I asked him to help expose the illegal activities these men are running, activities that go far beyond simple loan collection." "Will he actually help?" Ellie asked cautiously. "He might, if it means protecting himself as well," Nathan said. "Victor has been living in fear of these same people for years. Cooperating with authorities could be his only path toward finally clearing his own conscience, and perhaps mine as well." Over the next several days, Nathan worked quietly behind the scenes, reconnecting with old colleagues and contacts he had avoided for years, carefully gathering information that could expose the criminal network Gregory represented. Ellie found herself assisting wherever she could, organizing documents, making calls, and offering emotional support during the long, tense evenings when Nathan seemed close to exhaustion. "I never expected to see you like this," Ellie admitted one evening, watching Nathan pore over old financial records spread across the kitchen table. "So determined, so willing to step back into a world you worked so hard to leave behind. I am doing this for your father, for Lily's future, and honestly, for you as well," Nathan said, glancing up at her with a tired but genuine smile. Somewhere along the way, this arranged marriage stopped feeling like an obligation and started feeling like something worth protecting. Ellie felt her cheeks warm slightly at his words, surprised by how much they meant to her. "I feel the same way," she admitted quietly. "I did not expect to find someone like you in the middle of what I thought was the worst situation of my life." One night, unable to sleep from the weight of everything unfolding around them, Ellie found Nathan still awake in the kitchen, a cup of cold tea sitting forgotten beside a pile of documents. She sat down across from him quietly, not wanting to interrupt his concentration, but he looked up anyway, offering her a tired smile. "You should be resting," he said. "Tomorrow will bring more of the same difficult work." "I could not sleep," Ellie admitted. "I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong. Gregory is dangerous, and you are putting yourself directly in his path again. I am aware of the risk, Nathan said honestly, but staying silent carries its own risk, one that never truly goes away. If I do nothing, these people will continue threatening your father, and eventually, they will threaten Lily as well. I would rather face the danger directly than wait for it to find us on its own terms. Ellie reached across the table and rested her hand over his. Whatever happens, I do not want you to think you are facing this alone. I chose to stand beside you the moment I understood who you truly are. Nathan looked at their joined hands for a long moment before meeting her eyes. A few months ago, I never would have imagined finding comfort in anyone again, let alone in the wife my circumstances forced upon me, yet here we are. Here we are, Ellie echoed softly, a small, hopeful smile crossing her face, despite the uncertainty hanging over them both. Their growing connection was interrupted by another visit from Gregory, this time far more aggressive than his previous appearances. He arrived unannounced one afternoon, while Nathan was still at work, forcing his way slightly into the doorway when Ellie answered. "Where is Nathan?" Gregory demanded, his previously calm demeanor replaced with obvious frustration. He has been asking questions, reaching out to people he should have left alone years ago. Tell him to stop, or the consequences for your family will only get worse. You already burned my father's shop, Ellie said, standing her ground despite her racing heart. How much worse do you intend to make things? Gregory's eyes narrowed. This is bigger than your father's small debt now, miss. Nathan is threatening to expose people who do not take kindly to threats. If he continues down this path, everyone connected to him will suffer the consequences, including you and that little girl inside. The mention of Lily sent a surge of protective anger through Ellie, stronger than any fear Gregory's threats could produce. Get off this property, she said firmly. Nathan will handle this his own way, and you will not intimidate this family into silence. Gregory studied her for a long moment, seemingly surprised by her sudden boldness, before finally stepping back. Tell him the deadline has been moved up 1 week, or the consequences will extend far beyond a simple furniture shop. When Nathan returned home and learned what had happened, his expression darkened with a mixture of anger and worry. I should have kept you and Lily somewhere safer while I dealt with this, he said, pacing the length of the kitchen. We are not going anywhere, Ellie said firmly. This is our family now, our problem to solve together. I am not going to hide while you fight this battle alone. Nathan looked at her, something shifting in his expression, a mixture of gratitude and quiet admiration. Your father was right about you, you know. He once told me you were stronger than you realized, that beneath your privileged upbringing was someone capable of real courage when it truly mattered. The following days passed in tense preparation. Nathan worked closely with Victor, who had reluctantly agreed to cooperate, providing detailed records of the illegal financial activities being run through seemingly legitimate businesses. Together, they compiled enough evidence to bring the situation to the attention of financial crime investigators, hoping to dismantle the network before Gregory's deadline arrived. 3 days before the deadline, Nathan received a call summoning him to a meeting with the investigators he had contacted. Ellie insisted on accompanying him, refusing to let him face this final confrontation without her support. The meeting took place in a small, unremarkable office building downtown, where a team of serious-looking investigators reviewed the evidence Nathan and Victor had gathered. The lead investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Diane, studied the documents carefully before finally looking up at Nathan. This is substantial, Diane said. Combined with testimony from your former partner, we may finally have enough to bring formal charges against this entire network. This could result in significant arrests within the coming days. What about my family's safety in the meantime? Nathan asked. These are dangerous people, and they have already made threats against my wife's family. Diane nodded seriously. We will arrange protective measures immediately. Given the severity of the threats and the strength of the evidence you have provided, we can move quickly to bring this network down before they have a chance to retaliate further. Walking out of the building afterward, Ellie felt a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. Do you think this will actually work? She asked. Will it truly be over? I hope so, Nathan said, taking her hand gently, a gesture that felt entirely natural, despite how far they had come from their initial cold, distant relationship. Whatever happens next, know that I will do everything in my power to protect you, Lily, and your father. no matter what it costs me personally. That evening, as they walked home together, beneath a sky filled with stars, Ellie found herself reflecting on how dramatically her perception of Nathan had changed. The poor, quiet mechanic she had once dismissed with contempt had revealed himself to be a man of remarkable depth, courage, and quiet determination, willing to risk everything to protect the people he cared about. But even as this newfound understanding settled comfortably between them, both knew the coming days would determine whether their carefully built plan would succeed in finally freeing their family from the shadow of Gregory and the dangerous network he represented, or whether it would instead bring even greater danger crashing down upon them all. Sirens echoed through the quiet neighborhood before dawn, red and blue lights flashing against the walls of nearby houses as a coordinated raid unfolded just 3 streets away. Ellie stood at the window, watching as unmarked vehicles surrounded a warehouse known to be connected to Gregory's operation, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and lingering fear. Nathan stood beside her, his phone pressed to his ear, listening intently to Diane's updates from the investigation team. "They are moving in now," he said quietly, relaying the information to Ellie. "Multiple arrests are happening simultaneously across several locations." Within hours, the news spread quickly through the community. A significant criminal network operating under the guise of legitimate lending and business services had been dismantled, with several key figures, including Gregory himself, taken into custody. The evidence Nathan and Victor had carefully compiled proved crucial in building a case strong enough to hold up in court. Gerald called almost immediately, his voice trembling with disbelief and relief. "Ellie, is it true? Are we finally free from this nightmare?" "It is true, Dad," Ellie said, tears of relief filling her eyes. "Nathan did this. He risked everything to protect us." Word of Nathan's involvement in exposing the criminal network began spreading beyond just their immediate family. Local news outlets picked up the story, intrigued by the mysterious mechanic who had once been a respected engineer, now credited with helping bring down a dangerous criminal operation that had been quietly extorting numerous families throughout the city. Reporters began showing up at their small house, eager for interviews, while neighbors who had once looked at Nathan with quiet pity now regarded him with obvious admiration and respect. Mrs. Caldwell, the elderly woman whose husband's surgery Nathan had quietly funded years earlier, proudly told anyone who would listen about the true character of the man they had all underestimated for so long. "I always knew there was something special about him," she told a reporter, standing outside the small garage where Nathan still worked. "He never wanted recognition for his kindness, but he deserves the world to know the truth now." Ellie watched from a distance as Nathan spoke calmly with the gathered reporters, uncomfortable with the sudden attention but graciously answering their questions nonetheless. Lily stood beside him, holding his hand tightly, her small face beaming with pride at seeing her father finally receive the recognition he had long deserved but never sought. That evening, after the reporters had finally left and the neighborhood had returned to its usual quiet rhythm, Ellie found Nathan sitting alone on the porch steps, staring out at the darkening sky, seemingly overwhelmed by the sudden shift in how the world perceived him. "Are you all right?" Ellie asked, sitting down beside him. "It is strange," Nathan admitted. "For years, I wanted nothing more than to disappear quietly, to avoid exactly this kind of attention. Now suddenly, everyone wants to know my story, wants to praise me for simply doing what I believed was right." "Maybe it is time to stop hiding," Ellie suggested gently. "You spent so long protecting yourself and Lily by staying invisible. Perhaps now, you can finally rebuild the life you deserve, without fear of the past catching up with you." Nathan looked at her, something soft and vulnerable crossing his features. "I never expected to find someone who would understand this journey the way you have, Ellie. When your father first proposed this marriage, I agreed out of obligation, expecting nothing more than a difficult, complicated arrangement. I never imagined I would find someone who truly sees me, beyond the reputation, beyond the mistakes of my past. I judged you so harshly at first," Ellie admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "I saw a poor mechanic and assumed the worst, when really, you were the strongest, kindest person I had ever met. I am sorry for how I treated you those first few weeks." "You do not need to apologize," Nathan said softly. "You were placed in an impossible situation, forced into a marriage you never wanted, Your reaction was completely understandable." They sat together in comfortable silence for a long moment, watching Lily chase fireflies in the small backyard, her laughter echoing softly through the cool evening air. "What happens now?" Ellie asked eventually. "With your reputation restored, with people finally seeing the truth about who you really are, do you plan to return to engineering, to rebuild the successful career you once had?" Nathan considered the question carefully. "I have thought about it, but honestly, I have grown to love this quiet, simple life. Perhaps I could find a way to combine both worlds, use my engineering background to help rebuild this community properly, while still maintaining the peaceful life Lily and I have built here." "I think that sounds wonderful," Ellie said, smiling genuinely for the first time in what felt like ages. Over the following weeks, life began to settle into a new, more hopeful rhythm. Gerald, grateful beyond words for Nathan's intervention, began slowly rebuilding his damaged business, this time with far more caution and wisdom than before. The community, inspired by Nathan's quiet heroism, began several initiatives to support local families, with Nathan taking on a leadership role, using his engineering expertise to help improve infrastructure throughout the neighborhood. Ellie found herself falling more deeply in love with the man she had once resented, discovering new layers of his character with each passing day. She helped him navigate his sudden return to public recognition, standing proudly beside him during community events, no longer the reluctant bride forced into an unwanted marriage, but a genuine partner supporting the man she now cherished deeply. One quiet evening, several months after the criminal network had been dismantled, Nathan surprised Ellie with a small, intimate dinner in their backyard, string lights twinkling softly above them while Lily slept peacefully inside. "I know our marriage did not begin the way either of us would have chosen," Nathan said, taking Ellie's hands gently in his own. "But I am incredibly grateful for how it has unfolded. You have shown me kindness, understanding, and genuine love, exactly when I needed it most, though I never expected to find it in these circumstances." "I feel the same way," Ellie said, her eyes glistening with happy tears. "What started as an arrangement I dreaded has become the greatest blessing of my life. I love you, Nathan, not for the successful engineer you once were, or the quiet mechanic I first met, but for the honest, caring, resilient man you truly are." Gerald visited often now, no longer the anxious, guilt-ridden father Ellie had grown used to seeing, but someone slowly rediscovering his confidence, grateful for the second chance his family had been given. He spent long afternoons with Lily in the backyard, teaching her simple card games, his laughter echoing through the house in a way Ellie had not heard since she was a young girl herself. "I never imagined things would turn out this way," Gerald admitted to Ellie one afternoon, watching Nathan help Lily plant small flowers along the garden fence. "I arranged this marriage out of desperation, never once considering that it might actually bring you happiness." "Neither did I," Ellie said honestly, smiling as she watched Nathan patiently show Lily how to pat the soil gently around each seedling. "Sometimes the paths we least expect turn out to be exactly the ones we needed." Victor, too, found a measure of peace after cooperating fully with investigators, his testimony helping ensure that Gregory and his associates would face serious consequences for their actions. Nathan, though he never fully trusted his old business partner again, extended a cautious forgiveness, understanding that redemption, however imperfect, still held value. Their small, quiet wedding, once filled with resentment and forced obligation, had transformed into the foundation of a genuine, loving family. Lily, who had initially been confused by the sudden presence of a stranger in her home, now called Ellie Mom with genuine affection, completing a family that had been broken by tragedy, but rebuilt through resilience, patience, and unexpected love. The world that had once looked upon Nathan with quiet pity now saw him entirely differently, recognizing the depth of character and quiet strength that had been there all along, simply waiting for the right moment to be revealed. And Ellie, who had once dreaded her forced marriage to a man she believed was beneath her, now understood that true worth had nothing to do with wealth or status, but everything to do with the quiet, consistent kindness someone chooses to show, even when no one else is watching. In the end, their story became a quiet reminder to everyone who heard it, that circumstances forced upon us do not define our lives, but rather, it is how we choose to respond to those circumstances that truly reveals our character, and sometimes, the greatest love stories begin in the most unexpected, unwanted places.